If you're still in school right now, it probably feels like making serious money belongs to a completely different world, populated by older people with degrees, connections, experience, expensive equipment, and years of knowledge that you simply do not have yet. Which is exactly why so many students convince themselves that financial success is something they will figure out later, once they graduate, get a proper job, or finally feel qualified enough to start. The reality, however, is that almost nobody feels ready in the beginning, and the people who eventually build real income are usually the ones who stop waiting for perfect conditions and instead focus on proving to themselves that they can make money independently for the very first time. That is why your first $10,000 matters so much, because this number is not important only from a financial perspective, but from a psychological one as well. Before you make your first real money on your own, money feels abstract, complicated, and disconnected from your actual life, almost like something controlled by luck, background, or intelligence. But once you earn your first meaningful amount yourself, even if it happens slowly, you begin understanding that money is usually the result of skills, consistency, positioning, and solving problems for other people rather than some secret system that only rich people understand. Most people think the hardest part is becoming a millionaire, but that is usually not true. The hardest stage is going from zero to your first real amount of income because during that phase, you still doubt whether any of this is actually possible for you. Once you cross that first threshold, your mindset changes completely because you stop asking whether money can be made and start asking how much further you can scale the process. The problem is that students often make this process dramatically harder than it needs to be because they immediately jump towards complicated things like crypto trading, high risk investing, e-commerce brands, or unrealistic side hustles promoted online by people selling shortcuts rather than practical advice. Instead of focusing on building a simple income producing skill, they spend months consuming content, watching motivational videos, designing logos for businesses that do not exist yet, or trying to imitate entrepreneurs who are already 10 years ahead of them financially. But if you are starting from zero while still balancing school, assignments, exams, and everyday responsibilities, your first goal should not be building a massive company or becoming rich overnight. Your goal should simply be creating momentum through something realistic, low risk, and scalable enough to start generating consistent income without requiring huge amounts of money upfront. When you remove all the noise from the internet and look at the most realistic paths available to students, there are only a handful of options that consistently work, although each of them comes with different advantages and limitations depending on how quickly you want results and how scalable you want the income to become over time. The first option is local services, which are probably the easiest businesses to start because they require almost no upfront investment and allow you to begin making money immediately as long as you're willing to provide value directly to people in your area. This could include things like tutoring, video editing for local businesses, photography, fitness coaching, dog walking, cleaning cars, helping people with social media, or even simple manual services that save people time and effort. A lot of students ignore these opportunities because they sound too basic, but simple businesses often make money faster than complicated ones precisely because people already understand their value. Nobody needs to be convinced why a cleaned car, edited video, or maintained lawn matters because the benefit is obvious immediately. The biggest advantage of local services is speed, since you can start without needing a website, expensive software, investors, or a complicated business structure. In the beginning, the only thing that truly matters is getting someone to pay you for solving a problem, because once money enters the equation, you stop operating in theory and begin learning through real experience. Most beginners waste enormous amounts of time trying to look professional before they have actually earned anything, which is why they end up spending weeks creating branding, social media pages, logos, and business plans while completely avoiding the uncomfortable but necessary step of finding actual customers. In reality, your first client teaches you more than months of preparation ever will. At the same time, local services eventually become limited because your income depends heavily on your available time and physical location, meaning there is a ceiling on how much work you can personally complete in a day. Even if demand increases, you still remain tied to working with one customer at a time, which is why local services are excellent for generating initial cash flow, but often frustrating when you try scaling beyond a certain point. The second option is selling local products, which includes things like handmade goods, baked products, artwork, customized items, clothing, crafts, or anything physical that people are willing to purchase directly from you. While this path can absolutely work, students often underestimate how difficult product businesses become once you factor in material costs, inventory, wasted stock, and the amount of time required to produce something people are actually willing to buy consistently. A common mistake people make with local products is confusing enjoyment with profitability, because it is entirely possible to spend 10 hours creating something you genuinely love only to realize the profit margin is incredibly small once all expenses are removed. This is why many product based businesses accidentally become low paying jobs disguised as entrepreneurship. The third option is global products, which includes e commerce stores, print on demand businesses, drop shipping, digital products, online brands, or reselling products to customers around the world. The biggest advantage here is scale, because unlike local businesses, you are no longer limited by geography and can theoretically sell to anyone with internet access. However, the reason many students fail with e-commerce is because they expect instant income from a model that usually requires patience, testing, reinvestment, and consistent marketing before momentum starts building. Product businesses often trap money in inventory and advertising early on, meaning the first few months can feel slow and discouraging even when progress is technically happening behind the scenes. The final option, and probably the best opportunity available to students today, is selling online services, because this combines the strongest parts of service businesses and internet scalability at the same time. Unlike physical products, online services usually have extremely high profit margins because you are primarily selling skill rather than inventory, while the internet allows you to work with clients from anywhere instead of being restricted to your city or local environment. That combination makes online services one of the fastest and most realistic ways for students to reach their first $10,000. One of the biggest misconceptions students have about making money online is believing they need to become experts before charging anyone, when in reality, most people improve dramatically faster once real clients, deadlines, expectations, and accountability become part of the learning process. There are countless online services businesses consistently pay for, including video editing, thumbnail design, copywriting, social media management, short form content editing, email marketing, ad management, appointment setting, website optimization, and many others that continue growing as businesses rely more heavily on online attention and digital marketing every year. The reason online services work so well for beginners is because businesses constantly have problems they either cannot solve themselves or simply do not have enough time to handle internally, which creates endless opportunities for people willing to learn useful skills and apply them consistently. The easiest way to choose which skill to focus on is by finding overlap between three things: what you naturally enjoy learning, what you can realistically practice for long periods without burning out, and what businesses are already spending money on right now. When those three things align, you usually find a skill that is both sustainable and profitable over time. A huge mistake beginners make is trying to perfect their abilities privately for months before putting themselves into the market, which sounds logical, but often slows growth dramatically because real-world feedback is one of the fastest forms of education available. At the beginning, your goal should not be maximizing profit, but maximizing experience, testimonials, and proof that you can deliver results consistently. That is why charging slightly lower prices early on can actually be strategic, because the faster you start working with real clients, the faster your skills improve, your confidence increases, and your portfolio becomes strong enough to justify higher pricing later. Most people assume income grows simply because skill improves, but in reality, there are several factors that influence your earnings just as much as technical ability. And understanding these factors early can dramatically speed up your progress. The first factor is positioning, because the exact same skill can generate completely different amounts of money depending on who you provide it to and what problem it solves. Businesses are usually willing to pay the most for services directly connected to revenue, customer acquisition, sales, or growth, because these outcomes affect their profits directly. For example, editing random gaming clips for small creators usually pays far less than editing content for businesses selling expensive products or services, even though the editing process itself may not be very different. The difference is not the software or the technical difficulty, but the financial value attached to the outcome. The second factor is leverage, because businesses do not truly care how many hours you spend working. They care about the results your work creates. The moment your service becomes associated with generating sales, attracting customers, improving conversion rates, or helping a business grow, your pricing power increases significantly because clients stop viewing you as an expense and start viewing you as an investment. The third factor is visibility, which is something most talented beginners completely ignore despite the internet rewarding public work more aggressively than ever before. Many students quietly improve their skills in isolation while never posting examples online, which means nobody knows they exist regardless of how capable they actually are. The internet heavily rewards people who consistently share proof of their work, process, improvements, and results because visibility creates opportunities that skill alone often cannot. A single post demonstrating your abilities can attract clients, collaborations, referrals, or long term partnerships far more effectively than endlessly sending cold messages in private. The fourth factor is reliability, which is probably the most underestimated advantage in online business today because the majority of freelancers and beginners fail not due to lack of talent, but because they communicate poorly, disappear unexpectedly, miss deadlines, or operate chaotically. Businesses value reliability because reliable people reduce stress and uncertainty, which means someone slightly less talented but highly organized will often outperform someone extremely skilled but inconsistent. If you respond clearly, deliver on time, stay organized, and communicate professionally, you already separate yourself from a huge percentage of beginners online. One of the biggest mistakes people make after finally earning money is immediately trying to look rich instead of building actual financial stability, which is why so many people increase their lifestyle long before they build any meaningful wealth. The difference between income and wealth is extremely important because income is simply money flowing towards you temporarily, while wealth consists of assets, investments, skills, and systems that continue producing value over time even when you are not actively working every second. That is why your first $10,000 should not simply become spending money, it should become leverage. Part of that money should be reinvested into improving your skills, increasing your efficiency, purchasing better tools, or creating systems that allow you to earn more consistently in the future. In the early stages, your greatest financial asset is usually your ability to become more valuable because higher value skills create higher income opportunities repeatedly over long periods of time. Eventually, once your income becomes stable enough, investing also becomes important because relying entirely on active work forever creates limits no matter how talented you become. The people who build long-term wealth usually follow surprisingly simple strategies consistently for years rather than chasing every exciting trend that appears online. They continue improving their skills, increasing their income, saving consistently, investing carefully, and repeating the process long enough for compounding to begin working in their favor. And this is why making your first $10,000 changes everything psychologically. Because once you prove to yourself that you can independently generate meaningful income, your entire relationship with money shifts permanently. You stop viewing financial success as something reserved for other people and begin understanding that money is usually the result of systems, leverage, patience, consistency, and valuable skills compounded over time.